Raees Mohamed of Warner Law here. We're going to do a live discussion on the latest with Britney Spears' conservatorship. And we're going to be joined by a friend of mine, actually a former student of mine, Mike Ortiz. And we are going to talk about what we think about this conservatorship issue and whether Britney Spears has any chance of getting out of it anytime soon. Mike Ortiz.
Raees, what's up, man?
How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, blessed.
I haven't seen you since you were a student in my clinic, right?
Yeah. You were my professor. I think that was about 7 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So since then, you've been in California, just chilling, doing your estate planning business, right? In Riverside, California?
Yeah. So, you were a big influence on me opening up my own law practice. We had some of those conversations in your clinic. And after I got my feet on the ground here, I opened up my own practice, was doing a lot of startup law. I focused on business IP stuff a lot. And as the sort of experience and just being here running a practice, I slowly started drifting into estate planning. And it's funny that I never took an estate planning class in law school, but that's a common theme with many lawyers. And so I'm primarily doing estate planning, wills, trusts, probate, estate administration, but I do have my specific business IP clients, very selective with those.
And so it's kind of like, as a lawyer, you have to become the expert at whatever you do as quickly as you can, right? And you become competent and you build a practice and you hope to help as many people as possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what you learn in law school. It's the sort of whatever you need to learn to have that focus and that drive to make sure you're an expert in that, sometimes in the matter of hours, and to be competent and represent your clients to the best of your abilities. So
that's right.
I love estate planning. It's so rewarding, and I never thought I would do it, but I'm a sort of, I'm not the I like to connect with clients. I like to really learn about them, and estate planning helps me do that. So
cool. Well, we're going to do this live on, I figured since you're a California attorney and you've got some experience in estate planning and you might have a better idea than the average Joe about conservatorships, that we could rap about Britney Spears, which has become arguably in the United States of America one of the biggest conservatorship cases from a public's eye. That one, and also Tom Girardi, the husband of Erica Jane from Real Housewives, which we've covered as well on our lives. But just talking for a high level, at a high level, real quickly. I mean, what does it really take to have a conservatorship appointed outside of the probate process, so outside of the death process? What are the considerations a court's looking at to even appoint a conservatorship in California?
Yeah, so and just to also explain, so conservatorships are handled in probate court. And it's very strange because probate, you think of probate when somebody dies, you have to go to probate court to administer their assets. But the probate code also handles conservatorships and guardianships. And I work in that area as well. And normally we see conservatorships with the elder population, people that either get dementia or some neurocognitive disorder to where they can't handle their affairs, or somebody who's just mentally disabled. And conservatorships are very, it's difficult to obtain one. It's difficult to establish that somebody needs a conservatorship to be appointed over them. And for somebody like in Britney's shoes, who's young, and this conservatorship was established while, you know, she was, you know, in the height of her career. It had to have been very difficult. Now, for and also we also need to separate. There's two sort of types of conservatorships. There's a conservator over the person, and that usually has to do with making medical decisions for them. And there's a conservator of the estate, which has to do with, you know, protecting the financial affairs of the individual, and you know handling the financial affairs. So it's a little easier to get a conservatorship of the person. And you know, each situation is different, but there are many times where there's a conservatorship over one and not the other. You know, in short, the court would have to find that that Britney had a mental deficit, so some sort of a mental disability, and the court would have been guided by a professional in, you know, in psychology or psychiatry, and so the court would find there was a mental disability, and that mental disability also caused a deficit in Britney's, you know, there's a list of different sort of life activities. So it would have had, the court would have had to make that connection and determine that she was, you know, potentially susceptible to undue influence, that she could not comprehend the nature of her actions, and basically couldn't act rationally.
And it's interesting, as anybody who's been following this knows, like you mentioned, I mean, this conservatorship, the petition, was set up in 2008, and, you know, none other than her dad, you know, Jamie Spears. And it's been an extremely windy road since then, right? And so anyone who's followed this has seen in 2007, 2008, allegedly, these meltdowns that were caused by some psychiatric problem that people alleged Britney Spears had. And you and I, this is before we were attorneys. I was in law school, and I distinctly remember watching these videos get posted on YouTube of Britney shaving her head or acting kind of crazy in public. And it was around the time that she was having a divorce, or you know, she was having this dispute with her BF, you know, and it was kind of just ugly, right? And it was very public. And so Jamie, her dad, moves into the picture and requests that a conservatorship gets appointed. And I think he petitioned to have himself appointed. And it was interesting because my understanding at the time was that he would just be a temporary conservator. And it seems like it went from temporary to pretty damn permanent for a long time, right? And so, I mean, how usual is that? How typical is that, you know, a parent could petition? And look, we have to make some assumptions that Britney Spears has a massive estate, right? That she has a massive net worth. The numbers I've seen are $55 to $60 million under management, excluding any appreciation of her real estate, right? So, I mean, how typical is that? Or I could say it this way: how difficult would it be to have a parent petition to be appointed as a conservator on a temporary basis, but then keep that for 13 years?
Well, you know, conservatorships are normally a permanent. It's usually a permanent thing. So what happens is, if there's, for example, an emergency, her father might have petitioned the court and filed a petition to have a conservatorship appointed, but he also would have done what we call ex parte, or, you know, basically he would have filed something, there would have been a hearing in a month or 2 months, and then he filed another thing saying this is an emergency, we need to get something established tomorrow. And I don't know exactly whether he did that, but that's what would be done. So, you know, the next day after filing, the court would, because, you know, there's only been a day after the filing, so the court doesn't have a lot of information. So the court would have had to make a determination that, okay, well, this is an emergency. We'll establish this, and that's temporary. That's sort of a, it's a temporary conservatorship until the actual main conservatorship hearing would have been held. And at the main conservatorship hearing, it's required that Britney would have had to attend, and that there be a medical evaluation submitted, signed by likely her treating psychiatrist. So it takes a couple months from when you initially file to get the permanent conservatorship, and in the meantime, there's usually a temporary conservatorship established if there's an emergency. But once the conservatorship is established, it's permanent until the person dies, or the person has to petition to have it, dissolved.
And there was a comment too by one of our watchers who basically said that, Jamie Spears, her dad, was never really a dad, right? He wasn't in the picture other than for purposes of money, and being an agent now. But what I think is interesting is, like, fast forward, many things happened, right? Since from 2008 all the way till, just this past week, many things happened. Now, Britney has had an opportunity to really address the public, right? She had a monologue, an opportunity for 15 to 20 minutes of her sort of version of the story. And it's very, very clear. You heard it. I heard it, right? I listened to it twice. I took some notes. It's very, very clear that she just thinks she's absolutely getting shafted with the conservatorship. She fundamentally disagrees with not just the idea of a conservatorship, but everything that's transpired, how things are managed, the fact that she feels like a slave, that, hey, if I'm so psychotic, how is it that I can go and perform in Vegas and make money for these people that I'm essentially paying for, right? And one of the distinct examples she uses is the fact that, hey, if I'm so crazy, how is it that I'm the one who's doing the lead choreography? And I think there's even video of the choreography of these dancers, right? And she's not having a meltdown. She's not acting crazy. How is it that I can do this specifically to make money and increase the size of, what's being managed under the conservatorship for the benefit of other people, kind of thing, right? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah. So, as with many things where lawyers are involved, there has to be money, right? If there's no money involved, then it's not going to get to this point. And I forgot to mention, when somebody petitions to get a conservatorship established, there's a hierarchy of potential conservators, and a parent is very high on that priority list. So, as a parent, her father was one of the first individuals that the court would normally appoint over a person. Conservatee is what we call it. The fact that he's the business manager, that causes a lot of concerns. Also, she mentions, she tells the story of her story of why the conservatorship was established in the first place, because she was overworked. She just was exhausted, and she wasn't allowed to take breaks. She wasn't given any control over anything. And reasonably, you can see that. You can understand how somebody who's mentally exhausted, maybe a little short, more likely to be angry, more likely to have some outbursts. We all lose our cool, especially when we're overworked. So that in itself is very concerning. But these things move very quickly. It sounded like she was being treated before that for some other psychiatric, or she had a psychiatrist and she was taking medications. She mentioned that she was taking her pills, and then the psychiatrist started to give her lithium. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't know, but it's a very fast process. The fact that her dad is her business manager is very concerning. And the fact that she's still working, and it makes you think there's definitely a conflict of interest there. I believe her financial conservator is now a third party. I believe the court did change that. But yeah, you know, her testimony really makes you empathize with her, and you know, it's reasonable to think that she went crazy because of being overworked.
You know, that's the interesting thing, and we all know people who are on tour, celebrities, and I actually have friends who are, you know, how can I say this? Who are musicians full time, the Hollywood life, right? And they are traveling, and other than for COVID reasons, you know, in the past year they didn't. But it is rough. Like, you're on the road if you're good and you're booking shows, right? And Britney Spears is booking shows left and right. You know, she explained how, look, I got threatened by my own management that if I don't do these tours, that they're going to sue me, and I felt coerced, and I had to sign this sheet of paper. And so it's weird because it's like, on one hand, they're threatening her, according to her, to sue her. They're forcing her to sign over and make decision to actually go and perform when arguably she doesn't have the capacity to make these decisions. So it's kind of like, who's really the benefactor here? Everybody that, like you said, there's a gigantic pot to put your hand in. Her dad was making, I think she said 60,000. I saw somewhere that the court appointed or authorized at least, you know, like $470,000 in fees as a conservator to her dad, and there's probably more than that. And certainly, if he's acting as her agent, then he's going to get the talent agency fee that talent agents get. I don't know these things. I'm speculating, and this is probably out there, and somebody listening can correct me if I'm wrong now or later. But the point is, I am most concerned about this conflict of interest, because clearly there is a conflict. And conservators have a fiduciary duty, right? They have to act in the best interests of the person whom they are overseeing, the conservator, the conservatee, I think you said was the word, right?
Yes.
So, you know, they have to make sure that it is managed and it's in the best interest of essentially their client, if you will. And she goes on this narrative of saying, look, I'm on the tour, I'm on tour constantly. I'm being coerced into doing the shows, and I'm exhausted. And frankly, she is, I think somebody said 60K a year is correct. I thought it was 60K a month. Somebody correct that if I'm wrong. But anyway, going back to this, they're having her do some crazy, 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 crazy amounts of work. And on top of that, taking away her capacity to even make the decision to work. And that's why she makes the analogy, right? She's like, this is slavery. This is like I'm being trafficked. Is that, I mean, have you ever seen or heard of such a thing?
Well, you know, so a conservator is a fiduciary to their client or to the conservatee, very similar to the attorney-client fiduciary relationship. And conservators are compensated. So, you know, there's an inherent conflict right there. The conservator, you know, potentially wants to make sure they're still on payroll getting paid. You know, with it's very strange, like you mentioned, that if she didn't have capacity, then why would they make her sign that agreement? If they knew she didn't have the capacity to sign it, then why would they make her sign the agreement? And that in and of itself, I mean, you know, that's potentially undue influence, contractual fraud, maybe. So, you know, and the thing is, to get a conservatorship, it's pretty tough, but once it's established, it shifts the burden, and now you're guilty until proven innocent, essentially. So,
Wow.
you know, she makes, and also this, you know, I didn't listen to this, but I read the transcript, and you know, courts right now, we're doing court over the phone. So I believe she was telling the judge this over the telephone. So, you know, it's hard to communicate over the phone, especially in serious matters like this, especially very emotional matters. So you can tell she was getting very emotional when she was telling her story. But, you know, she's really got an uphill battle, to be honest with you. And she needs to really just do her best to stay cool, calm, collected, because the factors that the court's going to look at really have to do with that, with her ability to maintain her composure and act reasonably, that's really what she's going to have to do to get out of this.
So there was another correction at $16K of fees per month on top of legal fees. Yeah. So here's a question. How much of this testimony, whether it's accurate or not, right? Like, she's talking about not being able to get married and not being able to have kids, right? You probably heard some of that too. Notwithstanding the facts of what she understands to be her legal limitations. I mean, how much weight do you think this judge is going to give to Britney's testimony? Do you think that this judge is going to say, she sounds crazy to me? Do you think she's going to say, no, we need to take the interests of the conservatee and see, what the issues are and actually get a legitimate hearing and testimony and weigh the evidence and make a decision? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, in my experience, probate judges are very reasoned, especially in situations of conservatorships. That's why the potential conservatee has to be present in court. There's also something called a court investigator that is assigned in every conservatorship that has to meet with the conservatee. They do an investigation. Oftentimes there's psychological specialists that are involved, and the court's interest, the court is very interested in making sure that the conservatee's interests are being furthered. As far as conservatorships treat procreation very in a special regard, and the state of California, it's a touchy situation, because there are conservatees that are developmentally disabled adults, and there's laws that have to apply with procreation and sterilization and the ability to marry and things like that. So these are touchy subjects, but the courts are familiar with addressing these. So I believe, I don't know this judge, but I believe this judge is going to take her testimony, give it due weight, because the courts do care about this. Of course, though, the courts want those experts to give their opinion as well, especially with procreation, because with procreation, we're talking about Britney, but we're also talking about a potential child, and Britney's ability to be a parent sufficient to raise that child in a healthy way.
It's interesting because I heard, when I'm listening to Britney Spears talk, I'm hearing a very injured person. Like, it was a very passionate. I didn't hear somebody, she had some slip ups, and it was a pre-written statement, and she was nervous. She kept apologizing, but it was well put together in the standpoint of, it was emotional, but it was also her trying to explain the facts. Hey, I have security 24 hours a day. I have people watching me get naked and change every day. I get, 10 hours a day. I'm having to go to these meetings, and I don't even know who these people are, and they don't really care about me. They're just checking boxes, and I'm actually feeling depressed because of this, right? And I'm getting forced to take lithium, and I don't have these proper evaluations. And so it is pretty convincing to hear her talk about, hey, I don't think this is really in my best interest. This is a game. It's been going on too long. And, her dad's making decisions that cost her 55, 60 grand a month to be in these rehab centers or these psych centers, right, in Beverly Hills. None of it's cheap. And so she's like, look, I don't get to make decisions on my money. I'm earning the money. Clearly, I'm sane enough to go on tour, but I have control of nothing else. And I know, for me, I feel like that raises these civil liberty issues, because it's you're a free person, but you're not. You're good enough to work and make money for everybody, but we don't really trust you. I mean, if she was that crazy, she'd jump off stage and run away.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, or do something crazy while you're in the public's eye. And it sounds crazy. One thing I was going to run by you, there was a lawyer who actually, I haven't read all of the case files. I'm imagining you probably haven't gone through all of her case file. But I know that there's at least one lawyer who was asked, by a publication to go through the documents that were on file with the conservatorship. And I have to imagine this file's pretty thick because this is 13 years in now, right? So one of the things that conservators are considering too is the management of the money, right? The management of her estate, and when we say estate, her living estate. So all of the wealth that she's amassed. So there's a report that has to be given every so often to the court, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
And one of the things that this lawyer who's read the case files, one of the things that he said, I'm just going to read what he wrote, is, quote, "It looks like she's thriving under this conservatorship. It impacts her. She can't make all the decisions she wants, but it looks good from this court file." And then another quote, "He has to file every year an accounting of all of her finances, and though some documents are redacted, they show that under his control, her estate has gone up between 28 million and 47 million, which is substantial. That's the increase. That's the delta." And this is another quote. Quote, "It doesn't sound like a situation in which she is being taken advantage of." Now, granted, that's his view of the size of her estate and the growth. So in other words, hey, this is not a financial abuse conservatorship issue. This is an issue of, I'm Britney Spears and I want to be back in control. What do you think about that?
Well, and let me just say this, that I don't want to immediately assume that there is, evil, ill will, ill intent on any of the fiduciaries. She's got a professional fiduciary now. Her dad is not handling the finances, but even, her medical professionals. But there is something to be said about if somebody's getting paid, right? If you're getting paid, I mean, there are financial professionals that try to get celebrities, as clients so that they could manage their money and earn whatever fees or whatever. So it's not a surprise that if there's a financial professional that is managing these millions of dollars, that it's going to go up, because that's what financial professionals do with their money. And, if a financial professional managed my money, it'd probably go up more than me managing it myself. So I don't think that in and of itself should justify the financial conservatorship, staying there, because to me, that's not the factor that should be. The thing that should be looked at is whether Britney is susceptible to undue influence from other people, whether she's able to think reasonably about her money. And really the conservatorship is there to protect her from causing herself damage financially or medically. So, the fact that it's increased, I mean, any monkey that was using Robinhood could have probably got those same gains over the past couple of years, right? So I that factor, I don't give much weight to it.
So there was a question, Mike, here from Wendy Beth. How can it be legal to force her to perform? Great question. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's I don't think it's so much that they're forcing her to perform. I think it's more that she has a business manager that has, contractual arrangements, to perform. And if she failed to perform, they would probably be in breach of contract, and that would probably cause more damages to her. I don't, like I said, I don't want to put a lot of ill will on her psychiatric professionals, but I would think that if she was, mentally unable to perform, then she would have some support from her psychologist, psychiatrist. And I don't know, she of course is very passionate about the feeling that she's forced to perform. But if she's entered into any contracts to perform, then, it's probably likely that they just don't want her to breach those contracts, because that may cause more financial damage or career damage to her.
And the way I like to look at this is conservatorship, to me, it seems like it's designed to do the following. you're able to do some things. So let's say that gap is, that you can go from here to here, but you can't do things from this point moving forward. So there's a gap, right, in what you need to accomplish. And conservatorship is supposed to be designed to plug in that gap, right? And it's case by case basis. It's based on the facts. I feel like there are some facts being ignored here. Like, I feel like she has the capability to do a lot, and yet they're kind of looking at this with a blind eye for what she can do, right? And they're just saying, well, we're not going to let you do anything other than what we think you're contractually required to do. And so it's interesting. So there was a question, but if she's unable to make decisions, how can she, in the right state of mind, how can she be in the right state of mind to make contracts? And I think going to your point is these contracts could have been pre-existing, Like she had a 10 or 15, 20-year contract to perform, or if she had a contract that said that whatever we agree, however many shows we agree to, you have to perform, right? Those things could have been pre-existing. But yeah, I question if, like this document she says she was forced to sign while on tour, I question, like you brought up earlier, I question whether those things are valid, whether she had the capacity to sign them, or if she was subjected to undue influence or duress, which is certainly a defense to a contract, right? To being into a contract.
Yeah, and it's a very it's a very delicate balance between, let's say one day she said, yes, I do want to perform. She maybe performing makes her feel good. It gives her some sense of purpose. Maybe it gives her some autonomy over her expression. And so really, we don't know, but the conservator is literally given the ability to enter contracts on her behalf. So, having her dad as a conservator and her business manager, 100%. Yeah, it raises a bunch of red flags, and I think the court recognized that, which is why the court removed him from that, position of, the financial man or the financial conservator. But, it's, the court cannot manage every single day of what goes on. The court sort of gives the conservator the authority, and the law gives the conservator the authority to manage the day-to-day. And it's tough because not every decision is going to be the best decision. And sometimes what may sound like a good decision today might not be the best decision tomorrow.
What are the chances that she needs to have this psych eval that she's fighting hard not to have to do again before this conservatorship is dissolved?
Yeah, she 100% has to. She needs to consent, or she needs to cooperate. And I mentioned before, the only way she's going to get out of this conservatorship is if she maintains a cool, calm, collected demeanor, because like I said, right now she's guilty. She has to prove her innocence, and it's hard. It's difficult to overcome that. The threshold is clear and convincing. So that's more than 50.1%. It's not exactly undeniable proof, but she has to prove by clear and convincing evidence. And part of the probate code, part of the law, part of the factors that the court uses to determine whether somebody has a deficit, lacking capacity, is the ability to moderate anger, and their tone and demeanor. So, it's tough because you can understand how frustrated she is. And there are people who are 100% autonomous that flip out in court and go even more crazy than she does, So, but, she has to take a very high road and handle this in a very cool and calm way, and sort of remove some of her emotion out of it. And, because the judge needs that evaluation. It's just like, in order to make a ruling, the judge needs to cite evidence to support the ruling. And the judge is not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So she needs to do that 100%. If I were her attorney, that's what I would tell her.
And sort of just some wrapping up final comments. This is going to be an interesting one to track, and we plan to talk about this more. And for anyone who's watching, we'll post a link to this on our page or on this live when we publish it. But we've got a timeline on rmwarnerlaw.com where we actually walk through the entire timeline of Britney's conservatorship. If anyone wants to land on our site and then just type in Britney Spears, they'll see the blogs that we've done, and we kind of break out what's happened every year, or every play-by-play thing that's happened. The interesting thing is, how long is this going to go on, right? The interesting thing is how much controverting evidence, you're speaking like a lawyer, how much controverting evidence is there going to be to show that she's still incapable of making decisions, any decisions relating to her career, financial expenditures, going on tour. You know, how long before she's found to be fit, and what kind of evidence is going to be needed, right? Like you said, it's a clear and convincing standard. It's going to require her to cooperate and go through the psych evals, as crazy as she may feel they're going to be. But I feel, and probably many people feel, like it's probably time that she put her best foot forward and really shoot for this, right? And that she really try her level best to put up her show, put up the evidence, and let the court make a well-reasoned decision on this.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the court, you know, when the court makes its ruling, if it starts to give her some more autonomy, you know, starts to allow her more decision making, because more than likely that's the route the court's going to do. The courts are unlikely in situations like this to just say, okay, all or nothing, it's over. More than likely the court's going to say, okay, let's do a 6-month review. You know, these are, you know, or, you know, let's give her some more financial control. Let's give her some more medical control, and we'll come back in 6 months and see where we're at. And, you know, she has her own attorney. Usually there's a law firm that handles, you know, their firm specifically is representing conservatees or, you know, wards or people who are being managed by conservators or guardians. So she has an attorney too, and they're probably great lawyers. And, you know, I think if she does put her best foot forward and like you said, you know, stay level, you know, she has a good chance of getting her freedom back.
You know, it'll be interesting, man. There was another comment by Wendy. I still can't understand how a court would agree. Basically saying that, how could a court say she's competent enough to perform but not competent enough to kind of manage her own life? And I think that just goes back to, there can be degrees of competency, right? Because conservatorship is designed to fill in the gaps of where a person may not be able to operate. But I tend to agree with the general consensus of her fans, which is, look, I think we're at the point where she is capable, and you can also have a conservatorship that is sort of backed out gradually, right? Like a claw back gradually. It doesn't have to be, okay, all of a sudden the conservatorship is over. It can happen in baby steps, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what should happen here, you know, just my opinion. But no, I agree with you. You know, and going back, when it was established in the first place, it was probably just bad timing for her. And you know, it's really sad that she now has the burden. She has the burden to prove her competence.
Well, Mike Ortiz, it was great seeing you after a while. You know, thanks for your commentary. And if people want to learn more about estate planning and probate rules in California, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website is mikeortizlaw.com, and my Instagram is at mike.ortiz.1000. And you know, I used to put out a lot of videos on estate planning, probate, and you know, with COVID, and I just had a baby, and a lot of life changes. Just moved my office.
Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you. So I'm so happy, love her to death. And yeah, so I'm gonna get back on the content creation. So yeah, my Instagram page is probably the best place for that.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely keep everybody posted on Britney Spears and her battle of the conservatorship over the conservatorship. And if there's any new hearings or new evidence, we'll be sure to tell people about it. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Mike, for your time as well.
100%, Raees. Good to see you, and nothing but the best for you and your firm and your family.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're trying. It's a little cooler today. It's 105 or something. So
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.